The Tao of Self-Confidence, episode 267. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello friend, welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have a phenomenal lady on the show today. She's a music artist and a TV radio host, and I'm just really excited and honored to have her on and share her story with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Larissa Lam. Larissa, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to our listeners.
Hey Sheena, thanks for having me on today. Well, I have a very interesting background. I grew up in Southern California, and I was brainwashed into thinking I'd be a doctor when I grew up. And somewhere along the way, when I was towards the end of high school, I got an epiphany that I was going to go into the music industry instead, actually, at first I wasn't even going to be a recording artist, but to be a music composer and music producer. Fast forward a little bit, I went to UCLA, and then I ended up becoming the CFO of a record label. And from that point is actually how I ended up becoming a recording artist, singer, and songwriter. So I started touring with a group called Nitro Praise there. And shortly after, I started embarking on my solo career. I've been really blessed. I've had a lot of other opportunities to do some varied things besides making music. I've had a chance to host a TV show for 9 years called Top 3 on a network called Juice. And then currently I'm hosting a talk show called You Talk Radio, which is a new show, a call and advice show for young adults and teens. And along the way, I had a chance to write music for the Oprah Winfrey Show, numerous other TV and film and commercial projects. So yeah, it's been an interesting life, I will say.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Larissa, what would be your cultural background?
I am Chinese American. My parents were born in Shanghai, but my dad's actually Cantonese and my mom is Shanghainese.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that info. And what would be your favorite self-confidence quote?
Whenever people ask me that, I always have to stop and think. And I actually wrote a song a few years ago called I'm Not. And really kind of dealt with that issue. And so in the interest of not sounding so vain, I'll quote the lyrics, but it says, I'm not the kind of girl to conform to this world. I will live the way I believe is right. And really why that was a big self-confidence quote for me is that so many times as I've been kind of journeying through life and coming up through my career, I've had so many people tell me what I should and shouldn't be. And so I really reminded myself, it's like, I'm not going to compromise to what everybody else thinks I should be, but I'm just going to believe and stay on the path that I believe is right and true.
Thanks for sharing that. And, that's a great quote that you mentioned, especially being an Asian woman. We're so prone to just follow everyone else's orders and, just live that one route that we've been told to do, kind of like go to school, get a job, get married, and never rock the boat. And, there's more to life out there than that. And, it's great that there's so many women now out there who's kind of like pushing, going out of the boundaries and finally doing things that they love to do, living life to their design. So great quote that you mentioned. And in your own words, how would you define self-confidence?
I think self-confidence is truly understanding your self-worth. It's knowing your value. I think people who lack confidence don't understand that they are valuable. And so I think when you realize that you are valuable, you have something to contribute, that you will finally understand what self-confidence is.
Great definition. I believe too, it's really knowing how much you're worth, because there's so many people out there who feel like they're not worthy, and that's because they feel like, other people have to give them some type of worth, not knowing that it's up to them to give that, to know that they are worth more than they realize, to go out there and do the things that they love. So thanks again. And, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
I was fairly fortunate in the fact that I grew up with parents that gave me a lot of confidence. However, I think where my self-confidence was really, really lacking was, when I was placed in, group situations at school, for instance. I grew up, at the time, the town that I grew up in Diamond Bar was predominantly white. And so at home I had felt confidence because my parents told me they loved me. But then once I went to school and I wasn't the most popular girl, and I was the nerdy girl because I got good grades and I was one of the only Asians in my class, I certainly felt a lack of self-confidence. I think my turning point really was, understanding why God made me, Asian American. And, growing up, I felt like I wanted to be blonde hair and blue eyed. And so I thought like, oh, if I was that, or maybe if I became popular, then I would finally gain that self-confidence. But, all those things were kind of like false solutions to that idea of self-confidence. And so for me, it actually took me years later before I realized that, I am beautiful the way I am. I don't have to be something else.
Thanks for sharing that. And, I think it's something, especially if you're an Asian family immigrating to the States or Canada, it's like, we're set in these situations and we feel like we have to follow the Western ways. Like you said, dyeing the blonde hair, changing your name. Some people get ashamed of being Asian because they're not, Caucasian, and not realizing that, who we are is truly amazing, and just learning to be, accepting ourselves for who we are that's where the magic happens. And was there any like specific point in your life when you realized, you were more than enough, your confidence was, was there one point, like, what was that aha moment in your life when you realized you were worth more than you realized you were just more than enough?
I think it really came later in my life, like after college. I remember I was going to this leadership retreat. I was involved with this organization of people in entertainment. And one of my friends, she's actually Caucasian. I started telling the story, and, I always tell people like, oh, I don't like Chinese food and I don't like going to Asia. I'm kind of a traitor to my culture. I don't like a lot of the cultural norms, the status symbols and, that whole rat race of being, Asian American and keeping up with the Lees and, all those things. And I remember my friend Susan like turned around and she said like, you sound just like Jonah. And I'm like, what? And there's a story in the Bible about Jonah. A lot of people know this. It's like Jonah and the whale. He gets swallowed up by this whale, and it's because God was telling him like, there's all these people over there that are not like you, and I really want you to tell them, about me, and I really want you to spread goodness to them because that they're doing a lot of bad things in the world. And Jonah ran away from them because he thought, oh, those are bad people. I don't want to be anywhere near them. And for some reason, the light bulb went off that I would kind of been like Jonah, where I had, instead of embracing my people, embracing my culture, I was actually rejecting them and casting judgment at my own people. And I realized that, there was actually a reason why God made me Chinese American. I think it was to be a bridge builder. And I think it was, I speak multiple languages, and, I speak Cantonese and Shanghainese and Mandarin, and I am attuned to both American culture and Chinese culture. Finally realized what my purpose and what my role in life was.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And, because of that huge realization where, now instead of being ashamed of who you are, you started embracing it. What's your life been like now?
Well, I've actually been very much a proponent of, Asian American advocacy in one regard. I think prior to that, when I went to college especially, I went to UCLA, and I thought I would get involved with a lot of the Asian organizations, growing up. But then once I got there, I felt once I went into entertainment, I couldn't really relate to anyone else Asian American because everyone at the time was, following doctor, the engineer, or the safe path. And here I was going into entertainment, and I felt like I didn't relate to anyone. And I felt like, well, I think I'll just stay as far away from that as possible because no one else is Asian that's going into entertainment. And then I think I started to, once I had that realization, I think I started to definitely get more involved with different Asian American organizations and certainly educating myself more about different Asian American issues and a lot of the different history. In fact, my husband and I just recently directed a documentary short called Finding Cleveland that's about his family journey and his grandfather coming from China to Mississippi, of all places. And and it's not just his grandfather, but there was a whole population of people in Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta South, that were Chinese, that were actually there starting from the mid to late 1800s, and obviously were affected by segregation and all these other things that the people of color were affected by, and we don't know any of this history. And I think that's just one story in the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, and then you start looking on to other people groups of Asian descent and some other things that are going on. And so certainly after that realization, I've certainly taken it on a mantle to hopefully educate people that there's diversity within the Asian community. We're not all just homogeneous. We're not all from the same country. We all don't look alike. Or even if we do look alike, we all come from different places. And, there's a difference between Asian Americans, and there's a difference from people that are born overseas. And I can go on and on and on this topic, Sheena.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And it's true. We all don't look alike. I'm glad you're bringing awareness to this topic, too, because I didn't even realize, when you were saying your husband's family moved to Mississippi, I'm like, there's Chinese people in Mississippi, but, it's just...
That's what I thought.
Exactly. It's like you're never aware of what goes on. And even when you mentioned, like, the Chinese Exclusion Act, like, wow, I didn't even realize, we had that back then. So... it's great that you're bringing awareness to this, and I think the more awareness we have, the more we can find a solution and, just make better changes in our lives and in the world. So thanks for doing that. And Larissa, to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey of self-confidence. What would be that one tip you would give to her?
I would certainly say stay true to your own convictions, and know that you are uniquely made by God, and that you have experiences and talents and smarts and all sorts of things to offer to the world that only you can offer. And I know a lot of times part of the reason that people lack self-confidence is maybe they've had someone in their life that speaks negativity to them all their lives and told them that they weren't good enough, or maybe they've had some traumatic experiences or bad experiences with different people as they've come along the way in life. And, don't just hide those under the carpet. Use that and turn that into power, because I think, for myself personally, I've actually, as much as, I've talked about the self-confidence that I have now, I also even battled through depression several years ago through a traumatic event that happened, in my life. And I was able to overcome that. And now I speak out about mental health issues and share my story of overcoming depression. And there's power to that story. Whereas if I just did the Asian thing and swept it under the rug and hid it there, kept it in the closet for the rest of my life, no one could benefit for that. And so I just want to say that to anyone that's listening, is that your story has power to empower other people.
Those are great tips. Thank you so much. And I also believe in the power of a story. Stories are great because we can relate to them. We know that we're not alone, and that, if one person can overcome a dark place in their time, anybody else can do it as well. So thanks for sharing that. And Larissa, if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
My personal website is larissalam.com, and if you want to find out more about my film, about the Chinese in Mississippi, it's findingcleveland.com. And my social media, Twitter is @LarissaLam, and Instagram is @LarissaLamMusic. And you can find me on YouTube and Facebook as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you wanted to connect with Larissa, you can also head on over to thetaoofselfconfidence.com and search for Larissa's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else we talked about. And I just want to thank Larissa for taking the time to share her story and tips with us on self-confidence. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Sheena.
Not a problem. It was an honor to have you on the show. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence. And we'll catch you later. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com to check out cool resources, blog articles, show recaps, and so much more. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.